And hello, movie lovers. So tonight I'm actually reviewing this little short film that got sent in to me, and the name of the film is called Oldtimers, and it's actually a dark comedy slash horror movie that takes place during the holiday season. And basically, the plot point is this: you actually have these two characters that basically what winds up happening is this. On Christmas Eve, two associates, Richard and Lawrence, come together to celebrate the longevity of their uh, careers. Shortly after, Richard begins to reflect on the ambitions and struggles to accept his declining years. So, another thing I want to mention is this little short film tells a lot of detail within its own movie and everything. Like, for instance, you hear the little jingle bells as this one character is walking, and you don't know what it's setting up or anything like that, but you hear this haunting bells and this the way that they actually do it, it actually feels like a horror type movie that happens during the holidays. And then you get into where this character, he goes over to this house. Of course, he's also holding this box, or this case, and you're not sure what's in the case or anything. And your curiosity is like, okay, where are they going with this? What are they going to be doing with this, right? So the character rings the doorbell. Then this man answers the door, and then that's where the whole plot comes in, and that's when we get introduced over to our main two characters for the very first time. For instance, we actually get introduced to Conrad Coates' his character Lawrence, and also Julian Richards' Richard. And Richard was the guy who was actually carrying the present and stuff like that, but we don't know what's in that case just yet or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure if I'm going to cover that part because that this movie has a lot of twists and turns within the 14 minutes of the setup. But within those 14 minutes, there's a lot of stuff that's actually there. And I'm going to cover that in a few minutes on what's there. And then after that, I'm going to go on ahead and end the video. But okay, so basically, you wind up having this one part that's being played out. Of course, you wind up seeing Lawrence. He invites Richard in, and then I like how they have this thing going on, this little tango of dance, if you will. And Richard's explaining, well, Lawrence is explaining to Richard in his house that he likes red wine. He likes the fact that there's not a stem on the glass or anything like that to resemble the toast, to actually make it feel important. And that's exactly how Lawrence wants to feel. He wants to feel important. He's actually excited because Richard's there, because he wants to collaborate with Richard. And you're thinking that these two guys are actually artists in their own way because of the fact that, number one, they're reflecting on their past. And the way that Lawrence and Richard actually play it off is this. Like, for instance, Lawrence is saying this to Richard. He goes, yeah, but I bet you can't do what you used to do back when you were younger, because of course Richard's actually on blood pressure medicine. And he's like, well, everything is good all except my hand. I envy you. And of course you're thinking that he's insulting Lawrence because of the fact Lawrence actually invites Richard into his home. And Lawrence is like, what did you say? He goes, then of course that's when Lawrence says to him, he says over to Richard, he goes, what did you say? Because he's also hearing impaired too. And Lawrence goes, I envy you. But Richard says, I envy you. And he said, well, why do you envy me? Because the only thing you have is a bum knee. At least back in my day, in my prime, I was quick, I was fast, I was able to do more stuff. Because it's true, when we're young and everything, we're thinking that we're unstoppable. And that we're actually quick to be able to do the things that we used to do. Then as time goes by, as we're getting older and everything, we start slowing down a little bit. We're not as young as we used to be. And now you actually envy somebody that all they would have is just a bum knee. And it's actually very relatable on that part. And then, of course, Richard's also looking around at Lawrence's place. Lawrence's place is actually really cluttery to the point where he's messy. You can actually see. I like how they actually point that out, though, too, within this film, that Lawrence is actually a messy person versus how Richard probably is, where he's probably more of the type where he's actually not messy or anything like that. He's more of, he's pretty much got himself together versus Lawrence, who's just basically there for show. And then there's also this other thing that winds up happening out on the couch. They actually get in this little tussle where basically he says to him, well, I wish like I said, all I wish I could have was a bum knee. And then he turns around and goes, well, I wish I was young as I used to be and stuff like that. But then he goes into this other thing where they're insulting each other. And then he goes over to Lawrence, and Richard goes over to Lawrence, and he's right up in his face, right? So he's right up in his face, and you can definitely tell that he's on his breaking point, right? Then here's the thing: Lawrence has like a shoe that's like kind of like James Bond, who has a knife in his shoe that pops out like a little small blade that comes out of his shoe, and he goes, "Oh, you're messing with me. Okay, I see what you're doing. Okay." So then there's also this other point where they're actually doing the breaking the wall thing, but it doesn't feel like it's breaking the wall. It makes us feel like that we're right there in the room with Richard and Lawrence, and we're invited into this world that they're in, reflecting on their memories, which is very fascinating to me because I actually feel like I was actually in the living room. That's how good this directing was. Now, this is actually where it gets really interesting. So they're getting to the point where they're actually doing the gifts and stuff like that. And this is where I'm going to end it. Richard winds up getting a axe from Lawrence. Then Richard gives Lawrence winds up giving him a saw, like a hand saw, like you would see in the movie Saw. And then that's when you wind up knowing who they really are as people. But that's all I'm going to say because there's a lot of stuff that winds up happening after that. But I love this whole entire aspect of the fact that this movie takes place on a holiday where it's supposed to be this joyous holiday of Christmas, and then something horrific winds up happening to where you're thinking that basically Lawrence and you're also thinking that Richard are going to have and embark this collaboration together to celebrate together for Christmas, and they celebrate but in a different way. But this film has a little bit of dark humor in it, which I liked. This movie will actually keep you on your toes for the whole entire 14 minutes. Not only will it keep you on your toes for the whole entire 14 minutes of this film, but it makes you feel like you're engaging within the character and stuff like that. You wind up finding a lot more about Lawrence. And also, too, there's a little picture detail in this movie where you actually see a picture of this woman on the wall, and then later on it cuts to another picture later on in the movie. And then after that, it explains the whole entire detail why Lawrence is even inside the house to begin with. But this film is fantastic. I enjoyed it a lot. Great originality, great acting, great directing, and great writing. So that's going to be my review for Oldtimers. I hope that you enjoyed this short film review. Once I find out when this is going to be released to the public, I'll post a link below to let you guys know when you guys can check it out. But for now, I hope that you guys enjoy my review, and bye-bye.